Are you preparing for the PMP exam and want to get ready for the difficult questions? In today's video, we're breaking down 10 of the hardest types of PMP questions. You'll learn what makes them challenging, strategies to answer them effectively, and we'll walk through examples for each. Stick around, and by the end of this video, you'll feel more confident in tackling even the toughest PMP questions. Let's get started. Number 1. Situational questions. Situational questions evaluate your ability to apply project management principles to real-world scenarios. These questions typically present a problem or challenge that requires you to choose the best course of action based on PMI's guidelines. They are designed to test your critical thinking, problem-solving, and decision-making skills in dynamic and often ambiguous contexts. Why it's tough. These questions are challenging because they are rarely straightforward. The scenarios often involve competing priorities, incomplete information, and complex project dynamics. You must analyze the situation carefully, understand the broader context, and prioritize actions that provide the most value to the project. Additionally, the questions often include multiple good-sounding options, requiring you to differentiate between what's good and what's best, based on PMI's process-driven approach. The ambiguity and complexity of these questions can make them difficult to navigate, especially under time constraints. Here are a few tips for answering the question. When tackling situational questions on the PMP exam, take a moment to immerse yourself in the scenario. Think about what's happening, who's involved, and what's at stake. Be sure to consider the project context, whether you're addressing a risk, a stakeholder concern, or a deliverable issue. PMI wants you to think like a project manager who balances competing priorities, engages stakeholders effectively, and makes decisions based on best practices. As you review the options, think about what aligns with PMI's principles. Typically, you'll want to 1. Prioritize collaboration and stakeholder engagement over unilateral decision-making. 2. Avoid knee-jerk reactions that bypass analysis or documentation. 3. Focus on proactive actions, like assessing risks or impacts, rather than reactive ones that only solve part of the problem. Let's look at a scenario question together. You are managing a project to develop a new mobile application for a retail company. During user acceptance testing, several critical bugs are discovered that will require at least 2 weeks to fix. The project sponsor is pressing for the release to stay on schedule, citing the high impact of missing the market window. What is the best course of action? A. Proceed with the release as planned and document the issues with a plan to issue a hotfix post-launch. B. Engage the QA lead to determine whether the defects can be deferred to a future release without significant customer impact. C. Meet with the sponsor to review the risks and discuss potential trade-offs, such as adjusting the timeline or reprioritizing scope. D. Recommend releasing a stripped-down version of the app that excludes the bug-affected features pending stakeholder approval. You can pause the video here if you need more time. All right, let's walk through this together. The best answer is C. Meeting with the sponsor is not escalating, it is engagement with the accountable decision maker. PMI emphasizes transparent communication and risk-based discussions with stakeholders when delivery or quality is at risk. By reviewing risks and trade-offs together, the project manager facilitates informed decision-making without bypassing governance or assuming authority. Let's look at why the other choices are wrong. Choice A is incorrect. It assumes it is acceptable to release a product with critical defects and resolve them later, which compromises quality and ignores potential customer or reputational impact. Choice B is incorrect. It shifts the decision to a technical role without involving the business owner. PMI expects the project manager to connect technical realities with business implications, not delegate judgment in isolation. Choice D is incorrect. It changes the scope before confirming with key stakeholders. While releasing a minimal version could be a valid path, acting on it without discussing risks and approvals first is premature. Okay, let's move on if you are ready. Number 2, what to do first next questions. These questions test your ability to sequence project management activities logically and effectively. These scenarios require you to determine the most appropriate immediate action in a given situation, based on the project's context and PMI's best practices. They are designed to evaluate your understanding of project process flows, problem-solving skills, and ability to prioritize tasks. Why it's tough. These questions are challenging because they often present several seemingly valid options, and distinguishing the best action requires a deep understanding of PMI's process-oriented approach. It can be difficult to identify what needs to happen immediately versus what can wait, particularly when faced with competing priorities or overlapping processes. Additionally, the scenarios often introduce multiple layers of complexity, such as stakeholder expectations, risk management, and resource constraints, requiring you to think holistically and prioritize effectively. Here are a few tips for answering the question. To answer these questions effectively, first analyze the scenario to determine the project phase or process group it pertains to, such as initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, and controlling, or closing. This helps narrow down the options to actions that align with the current stage of the project. Focus on identifying the primary issue in the scenario and its potential impact on the project's objectives. Then, select the response that resolves the immediate concern while maintaining alignment with the overall project plan. Avoid choosing actions that skip essential steps, such as analysis or stakeholder engagement, even if they seem efficient. Prioritize proactive measures that address the root cause of the issue, involve key stakeholders as necessary, and ensure project control. Always aim for responses that reflect PMI's systematic and logical approach to problem solving. Let's look at the question together. You are managing a construction project, and during an inspection, your team discovers that a key structural component has not been installed according to the original design specifications. This could cause safety issues and result in project delays. What should you do next? A. Review the installation documentation and consult the design team to understand the deviation and potential structural impact. B. Notify the client about the issue and provide options for corrective action based on expert input. C. Consult with the construction supervisor to evaluate the cause of the deviation and determine if corrective measures are already underway. D. Initiate a formal change request to document the design deviation and update project records accordingly. You can pause the video here if you need more time. All right, let's break this down. The best answer is A. PMI teaches that the first step when encountering a potential issue is to understand the situation through impact analysis. That means reviewing documents, engaging the appropriate subject matter experts, in this case the design team, and confirming whether the deviation is a critical defect, a variance, or a misunderstanding before taking action. Let's look at why the other choices are wrong. Choice B is incorrect. It jumps ahead to stakeholder communication before verifying technical facts. PMI stresses engaging stakeholders after you've gathered sufficient context to explain risks, causes, and options credibly. Choice C is incorrect. While consulting with the construction supervisor seems reasonable, it does not address the design implications of the deviation. The issue centers on misalignment with the original specifications, so the design team, not the builder, should be consulted first. Choice D is incorrect. A change request is only appropriate after the deviation has been fully assessed and determined to require formal adjustment. Starting with documentation before understanding is out of sequence. Okay, let's move on if you are ready. Number 3. Stakeholder and communication management questions. These questions assess your ability to engage stakeholders effectively and ensure clear, timely communication throughout the project. These scenarios test how well you identify stakeholder needs, manage expectations, and resolve conflicts while ensuring project objectives remain on track. They also evaluate your understanding of communication strategies tailored to different audiences and project contexts. Why it's tough. These questions are challenging because they often present conflicting stakeholder priorities or unclear communication needs, requiring you to interpret the situation carefully. The difficulty lies in balancing stakeholder satisfaction with project constraints, especially when different stakeholders have competing demands or a limited understanding of the project's scope and goals. Additionally, the scenarios frequently involve subtle interpersonal dynamics or cultural considerations that make choosing the best response less straightforward. Here are a few tips for answering the question. To answer these questions effectively, start by analyzing the stakeholder landscape. Identify key stakeholders and their levels of influence, interest, and engagement in the project. Focus on the root cause of the issue presented in the scenario, whether it's a lack of information, unmet expectations, or conflicting priorities, and consider how your response aligns with PMI's best practices for stakeholder and communication management. Choose actions that promote transparency, collaboration, and trust. For instance, engaging stakeholders through tailored communication strategies or involving them in key decisions can often resolve tensions and build alignment. Avoid solutions that ignore stakeholder concerns, delay communication, or fail to address the underlying issue. Additionally, consider the medium and frequency of communication, ensuring your response fosters clarity and alignment. By emphasizing clear communication, thoughtful engagement, and a proactive approach to stakeholder needs, you can effectively navigate these nuanced scenarios and demonstrate strong stakeholder management skills. Let's look at a stakeholder question together. You are managing a project with multiple stakeholders, including external suppliers and internal teams from different departments. A key stakeholder has complained that they are not receiving the project updates they need to make decisions in a timely manner. You reviewed your communication management plan and found that their updates have been sent regularly. What is the best approach to resolve this issue? A. Verify that the stakeholder is reviewing the updates provided and align on when and how decision information should be used. B. Reconfirm the stakeholder's communication preferences and compare them with the current delivery method to identify any gaps. C. Engage the stakeholder to explore their expectations and determine whether communication frequency, format, or content needs to be adjusted. D. Bring the concern to a stakeholder review forum to evaluate whether communication responsibilities should be redistributed. Before you pause the video, if you are enjoying this content and find it helpful, please like this video and consider subscribing to our channel. Your support goes a long way. All right, let's think through this one. The best answer is C. PMI expects project managers to treat stakeholder communication as dynamic and responsive. Even if updates are being sent as planned, the project manager should engage directly to understand whether the method, timing, or relevance of the communication needs adjustment. This is not just about information delivery, it's about perceived value and decision enablement. Let's look at why the other choices are wrong. Choice A is incorrect. It focuses on verifying the stakeholder's behavior rather than improving communication. PMI discourages framing stakeholder issues in terms of fault or compliance. Choice B is incorrect. Reconfirming preferences is a helpful step, but it still avoids a direct conversation about dissatisfaction. It treats the issue as a formality rather than an opportunity to strengthen engagement. Choice D is incorrect. Elevating the concern to a stakeholder forum too early risks making a simple communication gap appear political or structural. PMI recommends resolving communication issues directly with the affected party first. Okay, let's move on if you are ready. Number 4, risk management questions. These questions evaluate your ability to identify, analyze, and respond to risks throughout the project lifecycle. The questions test your knowledge of proactive risk management practices, including assessing risk probability and impact, developing response strategies, and integrating risk management into the broader project plan. You may need to address existing risks, emerging risks, or overall risk planning in dynamic project scenarios. Why it's tough? These questions are challenging because they require you to analyze complex risk scenarios, prioritize effectively, and apply the appropriate response strategies. You must think proactively, balancing the project's objectives, constraints, and stakeholder expectations. Scenarios often involve multiple risks or shifting project conditions, requiring strategic thinking and a deep understanding of PMI's risk management processes. Here are a few tips for answering the question. To answer effectively, identify the key risks in the scenario and assess their probability, impact, and urgency. Focus on solutions that address the root cause of the risk while aligning with project objectives and stakeholder needs. Choose responses that demonstrate proactive, systematic risk management, such as updating the risk register, implementing a predefined response, or communicating adjustments to the plan. Avoid reactive fixes or decisions that ignore long-term implications. Let's look at a risk management question together. During a large construction project, A major supplier notifies you that they will not be able to deliver materials on time due to unforeseen production issues. This risk was identified in your risk register and classified as a high probability, high impact risk. You already have a contingency plan in place for this risk. What should you do next? A. Activate the contingency plan immediately and notify stakeholders about the potential delay. B. Monitor the supplier situation closely and wait to see if the materials can be delivered on time before activating the contingency plan. C. Review the contingency plan to ensure it still aligns with the current project situation and determine if adjustments are needed. D. Escalate the issue to the project sponsor to ensure that they are aware of the supplier's challenges and seek their advice. You can pause the video here if you need more time. All right, let's walk through this. The best answer is A. Since you've already planned for this exact situation, the best thing to do is activate your contingency plan right away. You don't want to wait around and risk further delays. Once you've set the plan in motion, you can inform your stakeholders about the potential delay and what steps you're taking to handle it. This keeps things moving smoothly. Let's look at other choices and why they are not the best answer. Choice B is incorrect. Monitoring the situation might feel like a cautious approach, but if you wait too long, you could end up causing more delays. It's better to be proactive and start implementing the solution. Choice C is incorrect. Reviewing the contingency plan isn't a bad idea, but since you already developed the plan specifically for this high-impact risk, it's better to act quickly. You can always fine-tune the plan if necessary, but don't let that slow down your response. Choice D is incorrect. Escalating to the project sponsor should be reserved for situations where you don't have a plan in place or when things are beyond your control. Here, you've already prepared for this risk, so there's no need to escalate right away. Okay, let's move on to the next one if you are ready. Number 5, change management questions. These questions assess your ability to handle changes to the project's scope, schedule, cost, or other baselines in a structured and controlled manner. These scenarios test your understanding of PMI's change control process, including evaluating change requests, analyzing their impact, engaging stakeholders, and updating the project plan and documentation accordingly. Why it's tough. Change management questions are challenging because they require you to apply both strategic and procedural thinking. You must evaluate the potential impact of a change across multiple project areas, such as scope, schedule, cost, and risk, while navigating competing stakeholder priorities. The scenarios often involve balancing the urgency of a requested change with the need for thorough analysis and adherence to formal change control processes. Additionally, these questions test your ability to make decisions that align with PMI best practices, even when faced with pressure to act quickly. Here are a few tips for answering the question. To answer these questions effectively, first evaluate the nature and scope of the proposed change. Identify its potential impacts on the project's baselines and assess whether it aligns with the project's objectives and constraints. Always consider the role of the Change Control Board or other governance bodies in reviewing and approving significant changes. Focus on responses that demonstrate a structured approach, such as conducting an impact analysis, engaging stakeholders, and documenting changes in the project management plan. Avoid skipping key steps in the process, such as analyzing impacts or seeking stakeholder input, even if a quicker resolution seems appealing. Additionally, prioritize solutions that maintain transparency and foster stakeholder alignment. Let's look at a change management question together. You are managing a project to upgrade the IT infrastructure for a multinational company. A key stakeholder has requested a change to include additional security features not originally in scope. The impact analysis has been completed, showing that the change will require additional funding and extend the timeline by 2 weeks. The Change Control Board is scheduled to meet in 3 days. However, the stakeholder is pressing for an immediate decision, citing the urgency of potential security vulnerabilities. What should you do next? A. Proceed with implementing the change to avoid further security exposure and document the decision retroactively. B. Inform the Change Control Board of the urgency and ask for an exception to review the change ahead of the scheduled meeting. C. Discuss the urgency with the sponsor and request their approval to move forward while waiting for formal review. D. Acknowledge the stakeholder's concern and explain that the change request will be evaluated at the next scheduled board meeting. You can pause the video here if you need more time. All right, let's break this down. The best answer is B. PMI's change management approach stresses structured governance, but also allows for flexibility in response to emerging risks. If a change carries time-sensitive risks, like a security vulnerability, the project manager can proactively communicate with the change control board and request an earlier review or fast-track evaluation. This maintains process integrity while being responsive to critical stakeholder concerns. Let's look at why the other choices are wrong. Choice A is incorrect. It bypasses the formal change control process, which can undermine governance, lead to uncontrolled scope changes, and damage stakeholder trust. PMI stresses disciplined change approval, especially when funding and schedule are impacted. Choice C is incorrect. While sponsors have authority, this situation falls within the jurisdiction of the Change Control Board. PMI expects project managers to honor change governance processes rather than reroute approval informally. Choice D is incorrect. This response is procedurally sound but lacks urgency. Simply deferring to the next meeting could delay necessary mitigation. PMI encourages project managers to advocate for timely issue handling, especially when risks are credible and time-sensitive. Okay, let's move on to the next one if you are ready. Number 6, leadership style and team management questions. These questions are designed to test how effectively you can guide and support a team to achieve project objectives. These questions often involve scenarios where you need to address team dynamics, resolve conflicts, motivate individuals, or choose the right leadership style for a given situation. The focus is on how you manage interpersonal challenges while keeping the project on track. Why it's tough. These questions can be tricky because they deal with ambiguity. There's rarely one right answer. You'll need to analyze the scenario, identify the key issues, and select an approach that balances competing priorities, like addressing team morale while meeting tight deadlines. Leadership requires adaptability, so you'll need to consider factors like team maturity, urgency, and individual personalities. Additionally, these questions test your emotional intelligence, your ability to recognize and address team dynamics while maintaining trust and alignment. Here are a few tips for answering the question. Take a moment to fully understand the scenario and pinpoint the team's immediate needs. Ask yourself, does the team require clear direction, collaboration, or individual support? Once you've identified the problem, align your approach with the appropriate leadership style. Choose answers that balance team needs with project goals. PMI favors solutions that address challenges constructively, maintain trust, and keep the project on track. Avoid rigid or punitive actions and prioritize open communication. The best responses often involve engaging the team, seeking input, and maintaining a positive environment while focusing on long-term success. Let's look at a team management question together. You are leading a diverse project team that has experienced recent conflicts over task assignments. Some team members feel that they are being given too much responsibility, while others are dissatisfied with the lack of challenging tasks. Morale is starting to drop. As a project manager, how should you address this situation? A. Use a democratic leadership style and hold a team meeting to allow members to voice their concerns and collectively decide on how tasks should be assigned. B. Apply a coaching leadership style. Meet with each team member individually to understand their preferences and strengths and reassign tasks accordingly. C. Take an authoritative leadership approach and reassign tasks based on your assessment of each team member's skills and the project's needs. D. Implement a laissez-faire leadership style to allow the team to self-organize and redistribute tasks among themselves. You can pause the video here if you need more time. All right, let's break this down. The best answer is B. A coaching leadership style is the way to go here. By meeting with each team member one-on-one, you can get a deeper understanding of their strengths, preferences, and frustrations. This lets you reassign tasks in a way that plays to their individual strengths and keeps everyone motivated. It's a thoughtful, personalized approach that fosters trust and morale. Let's look at other choices and why they are not the best answer. Choice A is incorrect. Holding a team meeting and letting everyone have their say is helpful, but it might not get to the root of the issue. A democratic approach can open up dialogue, but it may not fully resolve the underlying concerns, especially if individual strengths and weaknesses aren't addressed. Choice C is incorrect. Being authoritative and reassigning tasks on your own could solve the immediate issue, but it risks lowering morale even further if the team feels like their concerns aren't being heard. It's a more top-down approach, which might not work well in this situation. Choice D is incorrect. Laissez-faire leadership, where you let the team sort it out themselves, could lead to even more conflict and confusion. It's better to step in and provide guidance rather than leaving the team to fend for themselves. Okay, let's move on if you are ready. Number 7, hybrid and agile project management questions. These questions assess your understanding of Agile principles, practices, and their integration with traditional project management frameworks. The questions often test your ability to manage dynamic environments where iterative approaches like Scrum or Kanban coexist with predictive waterfall processes. You'll encounter scenarios that require balancing flexibility, stakeholder collaboration, and value delivery while adhering to project constraints like budgets, schedules, or regulatory requirements. Why it's tough. These questions are challenging because they require a deep understanding of both agile and predictive methodologies and the ability to integrate them seamlessly. Scenarios often involve competing priorities, such as maintaining a fixed timeline while incorporating iterative feedback. You must balance the need for flexibility with adherence to project constraints, all while keeping stakeholders aligned. The added complexity of hybrid models means you need to think critically about how agile and predictive elements interact and influence one another. Here are a few tips for answering the question. When answering these questions, start by identifying the key challenge in the scenario, whether it's a scheduling conflict, a stakeholder concern, or balancing iterative delivery with predictive requirements. Focus on responses that align with Agile principles, like delivering value early and involving stakeholders while respecting fixed constraints from the predictive side. Avoid solutions that overly favor one methodology at the expense of the other, as hybrid approaches require thoughtful integration. Choose actions that demonstrate collaboration, proactive communication, and adaptability. For example, responses that involve engaging stakeholders, refining processes, or prioritizing value delivery while maintaining alignment with constraints are typically best. Avoid rigid responses that dismiss either Agile's flexibility or the control of predictive methods. A balanced, system-wide approach that reflects the benefits of both methodologies will help you excel in these scenarios. Let's look at a hybrid Agile question together. You are managing a hybrid project that uses Agile for development and a predictive approach for deployment. Mid-sprint, a stakeholder urgently requests a new feature, emphasizing its importance for meeting market demands. The project sponsor has emphasized that the timeline cannot be extended due to contractual obligations. The development team is concerned that the change will disrupt their sprint goals. How should you proceed? A. Ask the product owner to break down the request and reprioritize backlog items to include the new feature in the current sprint. B. Convene the change control board to review the feature request and its impact on the fixed deployment schedule. C. Recommend deferring the request to the next sprint and ensure it is reviewed during the next backlog refinement. D. Advise the team to adjust sprint scope to accommodate the feature request since it is market-driven and time-sensitive. You can pause the video here if you need more time. All right, let's walk through this. The best answer is C. In a hybrid environment, PMI expects the project manager to respect Agile delivery principles, including the integrity of the sprint, while integrating predictive constraints. Mid-sprint changes are discouraged, especially when the team signals that it would jeopardize sprint goals. The best approach is to defer the change to the next sprint and ensure it is properly reviewed and prioritized during refinement. This balances responsiveness with discipline. Let's look at why the other choices are wrong. Choice A is incorrect. It promotes bypassing Agile norms by attempting to force a new request into an active sprint. Even if the product owner manages the backlog, mid-sprint disruptions undermine team predictability and velocity. Choice B is incorrect. While the deployment plan is predictive, the change request affects development within an Agile sprint. Invoking formal change control here misapplies predictive tools to Agile delivery. PMI recommends separating governance layers appropriately. Choice D is incorrect. It encourages sacrificing team stability for stakeholder pressure. PMI emphasizes respecting sprint commitments and reviewing new work through structured backlog refinement, not reactive adjustments. Okay, let's move on if you are ready. Number 8, earned value management questions. Earned Value Management (EVM) questions assess your ability to analyze and interpret project performance data using EVM metrics. These metrics include planned value, earned value, actual cost, and derived indicators like cost performance index, schedule performance index, cost variance, and schedule variance. These questions test your ability to evaluate whether a project is on track regarding budget and schedule and make data-driven decisions to address performance issues. Why it's tough. Earned Value Management (EVM) questions are difficult because they require both precise calculations and the ability to interpret results effectively. The formulas involved can be intimidating, and questions often combine multiple steps requiring you to calculate several metrics before arriving at the correct answer. Additionally, understanding what the metrics imply about project performance and deciding on the best course of action adds a layer of complexity. In an exam setting, the time pressure to solve problems quickly and accurately further increases the challenge. Here are a few tips for answering the question. To succeed with EVM questions, it's essential to memorize the key formulas and understand what each metric indicates about the project's health. For instance, knowing that a CPI above 1 means the project is under budget, while an SPI below 1 indicates it is behind schedule, allows you to interpret results effectively. Take time to read the question carefully, identifying whether it focuses on budget, schedule, or overall project performance. Work systematically through multi-step problems, ensuring accuracy at each stage of the calculation. Beyond the math, think critically about what the metrics mean and what corrective actions are appropriate, as EVM questions often test decision-making skills as much as technical knowledge. By combining a strong grasp of formulas with strategic interpretation, you can confidently tackle these challenging questions. Let's look at an earned value management question together. You are managing a project with a total budget of $800,000. At this point, 50% of the project work is completed and the team has spent $450,000. However, the planned work should have been 60% completed by now. What are the Cost Performance Index, CPI, and Schedule Performance Index, SPI, and what do they indicate? A. CPI equals 0.89, SPI equals 0.83. The project is over budget and behind schedule. B. CPI equals 1.11, SPI equals 0.83. The project is under budget but behind schedule. CPI equals 0.89, SPI equals 0.92. The project is over budget but slightly behind schedule. D. CPI equals 1.11, SPI equals 1, the project is under budget and on schedule. You can pause the video here if you need more time. Alright, let's break this down step by step. The best answer is A. To calculate the CPI, Cost Performance Index, you divide earned value, EV, by actual cost, AC. In this case, the EV is 50% of $800,000, which is $400,000. The team has spent $450,000, so CPI equals $400,000 divided by $450,000 equals 0.89, meaning the project is over budget. Now, for the SPI, Schedule Performance Index, you divide EV by planned value, PV. PV should be 60% of $800,000, which is $480,000. So, SPI is equal to $400,000 divided by $480,000, and that gives us 0.83, meaning the project is behind schedule. Let's look at other choices and why they are not correct. Choice B got the SPI correct, but the CPI is off. This project isn't under budget, it's over. Choice C is incorrect. The calculation for CPI is correct, but the SPI is slightly off. You've got the right idea, this project is over budget and behind schedule, but the SPI should be a bit lower. Choice D is incorrect. The calculations for both CPI and SPI are wrong here, leading to the wrong conclusion that the project is on schedule and under budget, which isn't the case. Okay, let's move on if you are ready. Number 9, PMI Code of Ethics and Professional Conduct. PMI, Code of Ethics and Professional Conduct questions assess your understanding of ethical decision-making and professional responsibilities as a project manager. These questions focus on the core values outlined in PMI's Code of Ethics: responsibility, respect, fairness, and honesty. You'll encounter scenarios where you need to navigate ethical dilemmas, handle conflicts of interest, ensure fairness, or protect confidentiality. The goal is to evaluate how well you uphold PMI's ethical standards while balancing project and stakeholder demands. Why it's tough. Ethics questions are challenging because they often present scenarios with competing priorities requiring you to navigate ambiguity and balance ethical integrity with professional responsibilities. These questions test your ability to align your decisions with PMI's core values: responsibility, respect, fairness, and honesty, while addressing stakeholder demands, organizational constraints, and sometimes emotionally charged situations. The correct answer often requires careful analysis and prioritizing long-term trust over short-term convenience. Here are a few tips for answering the question. To succeed, start by identifying the ethical principles being tested, such as fairness or transparency. Focus on responses that demonstrate integrity, accountability, and respect for all stakeholders. Avoid options that suggest dishonesty, bias, or neglecting ethical duties. Choose actions that promote open communication, build trust, and align with PMI's core values, even if they involve difficult conversations or decisions. By prioritizing professionalism and long-term relationships, you can confidently navigate these scenarios. Let's look at a code of ethics question together. You are the project manager for a large government project. During a team meeting, a colleague suggests using a subcontractor they know but fails to disclose their personal relationship with the subcontractor's owner. You suspect a potential conflict of interest. What is the best course of action? A. Ask the colleague privately about their relationship and remind them to disclose any potential conflicts before proceeding. B. Proceed with the subcontractor selection process but request additional bids to maintain fairness and competition. C. Raise the concern with the procurement office to ensure that proper procedures are followed and the situation is reviewed. D. Document the concern in the risk register and monitor the situation in case any issues arise during procurement. You can pause the video here if you need more time. All right, let's unpack this one. The best course of action is C. PMI's Code of Ethics emphasizes responsibility and fairness, especially in procurement on government projects. A suspected conflict of interest should be reported to the appropriate authority, in this case the procurement office, to ensure transparency, compliance, and impartiality. The PM's role is not to investigate or assume intent, but to ensure the process remains objective and ethical. Let's look at why the other choices are wrong. Choice A is incorrect. While private conversations are often a good first step in resolving interpersonal issues, this situation involves a potential ethical violation in a government setting. PMI expects concerns about conflicts of interest to be handled through formal channels to ensure transparency and accountability. Choice B is incorrect. This option attempts to preserve fairness by widening the competition, but it ignores the ethical red flag and could allow biased influence to persist unchallenged. Choice D is incorrect. Monitoring without taking preventive action fails PMI's standard for proactive responsibility. The Code of Ethics requires addressing concerns when identified, not waiting for evidence of harm. Okay, let's move on if you are ready. Number 10. Integrated project management questions. These questions evaluate your ability to coordinate all aspects of a project, such as scope, cost, schedule, risk, and resources, into a cohesive plan. The questions focus on how well you manage interdependencies and balance competing priorities to achieve project objectives. Scenarios often involve unexpected changes or conflicts, requiring you to assess the ripple effects of decisions across multiple project areas. Why it's tough. These questions are challenging because they require a broad understanding of how different project components interact. You need to evaluate the impact of changes in one area on the rest of the project, often with limited information. The difficulty lies in balancing trade-offs between competing priorities, making informed decisions under uncertainty, and thinking holistically to avoid unintended consequences. Here are a few tips for answering the question. To answer these questions effectively, focus on identifying the core issue and how it affects the project's interdependent elements. Consider the broader implications of changes in scope, cost, or schedule, and choose options that balance priorities while maintaining alignment with project goals. Avoid responses that focus narrowly on a single problem without addressing the broader impact. Prioritize actions that involve revisiting the project plan, collaborating with stakeholders, and using structured processes like change control or risk management. The best answers demonstrate a thoughtful, system-wide approach that keeps the project aligned with organizational objectives. Let's look at an integrated project management question together. You are managing a project to launch a new e-commerce platform. During a progress review, you discover that a key module does not meet functional requirements due to a design oversight. Fixing this issue will require significant rework, increasing costs by 15%, and delaying the timeline by 3 weeks. The sponsor is insistent on meeting the original deadline due to a high-profile marketing campaign already scheduled. What is the best course of action? A. Coordinate with the Change Control Board to assess the trade-offs and prepare a recommendation for the sponsor. B. Review the impact analysis with the sponsor and facilitate a discussion to determine the most viable path forward. C. Facilitate a working session with all key stakeholders to collectively decide whether to proceed with the rework. D. Facilitate a discussion with the core project team to gain consensus on how to proceed without delaying the deadline. You can pause the video here if you need more time. All right, let's break this one down. The best answer is B. This is an integration and stakeholder engagement scenario. PMI expects the project manager to present the impact and engage directly with the sponsor, who is accountable for making trade-offs involving cost, time, and scope. The sponsor must be included in the decision-making process, not bypassed or substituted, since the outcome directly affects business value and public commitments. Let's look at why the other choices are wrong. Choice A is incorrect. While involving the Change Control Board sounds procedural, the sponsor is the one with decision authority over business trade-offs. PMI expects the project manager to go directly to the sponsor in this case. Choice C is incorrect. This distributes the decision-making across multiple stakeholders, which dilutes accountability. PMI emphasizes engaging the specific stakeholder, here the sponsor, who is responsible for approving scope, schedule, and cost impacts, not treating it as a group decision. Choice D is incorrect. While facilitation is good leadership practice, seeking consensus only within the project team ignores governance roles. The team is not authorized to decide on changes that affect delivery scope or business outcomes. There you go, the 10 hardest types of PMP questions. We covered a lot in this video, and you may want to re-watch it to let these concepts sink in. You can use the timestamp to jump to any type of question you want to review. Before we wrap up, here is a thank you bonus for completing the 10 questions with final tips to help you tackle any challenging PMP questions. 1. Take your time. When you come across a tough question, don't rush through it. Take a moment to fully understand what's being asked. Often, the key to the right answer is hidden in the details, and rushing can make you miss important clues. 2. Eliminate the obvious wrong answers. Sometimes, the trick is not in finding the right answer right away, but eliminating the obviously wrong ones. Narrow down your options using the strikeout feature so you can focus on the best possible choice. 3. Think like PMI, not just like a project manager. Remember, the PMP exam tests you on PMI's best practices, not necessarily what you would do in your own projects. Always consider the PMI's preferred approaches when making your choice. 4. Trust your knowledge. Don't overthink. It's easy to second-guess yourself, especially on tricky questions, but often your first instinct is correct if you've studied well. Trust in your preparation and avoid overcomplicating the question. 5. Practice, practice, practice. Finally, nothing beats practice. The more PMP exam-style questions you tackle, the more familiar you'll become with the patterns and logic of these questions. So make practice exams your best friend. I hope you find this video helpful, as it takes many hours to put it together. If so, please like the video and consider subscribing to PM Aspirant for more PMP exam tips and strategies. So, how many did you answer correctly? Do you want more PMP exam prep videos like this one? Please let me know in the comments below. If you want more practice questions, please check out the link in the video description. Thank you for watching till the end of this video, and I wish you the best of luck with your PMP exam. Lastly, if you have not done so, make sure you also watch the PMP exam mindset video.